Chapter 18. Millie squinted. What was that? A cobblestone snapped deep in the sewer. The sound echoed around the bends like thunder, drawing nearer each second until the sharp noise cracked around them. The sound bounced behind them, and then it was around another bend, fading like a one-legged horse clopping through the tunnels. Gil touched his pouches of rosegrass and horn. They shuffled forward and peered into the darkness. There was nothing, save for a shaft of moonlight far down the path, pouring from a grate like a spectral waterfall. Between them and the light lay a pool of oily shadow. Gil involuntarily stepped toward his friends. We could still turn back, Rhea said. Raybor wouldn't, Hammond said. He has to be the hero, Millie muttered. Nobody has to be the hero, Gil said, but we could be, together. Millie squeezed his shoulder and Rhea nodded. I'm with you. Hammond entered the passage and they followed closely. Their spheres of gold and orange light pushed the darkness to arm's length. The world was reduced to Gil, Rhea, Hammond, Millie, and Ash. Their feet were lost in shadows, as though they were wading through a murky stream. Only their boots against stone knocked away the silence. They reached the pillar of moonlight. Shadows pooled and curled around the light like oil and water. Dark wisps slithered around the light like vines around a tree. This is no ordinary darkness, Gil said. Even as he spoke, the shadows seemed to constrict the moonbeam. The way branched left, straightened out, veered right. With each minute, their luminous sphere shrank like an air bubble at great depths. Was it Gil's imagination, or was the floor of murky darkness rising? Hadn't it been to Ash's knees? Now only Ash's shoulders and head were visible. It's rising, Rhea said, mirroring his thoughts. As she spoke, Gil felt a slight resistance under his next step that vanished with the sharp, hard crack of breaking glass. Millie shrieked in surprise. Hammond clamped his hand over Millie's mouth to cut off her cry. Gil's fear was reflected in Hammond and in Rhea's eyes. They waited for a voice in the darkness, for footsteps to come rounding the corner. After several long breaths, Hammond released Millie. The mist was to Ash's neck now, and Hammond hoisted the dog over his shoulders before Ash could breathe it in. Ash looked mythical, washed in equal parts gold, orange, and shadow. He peered around from his new vantage point. A roar like grinding gravel rang out behind them. The sound was familiar, only magnified, deeper. Gil and Hammond met eyes at the same moment. Scruffin'. There was a rock slide of noise in the dark tunnel ahead. Cobblestones cracked. Harsh, gravelly grunts scraped over them like a blade against a whetstone. A scruffin', Millie hissed. It's going to eat us. They don't eat meat, except worms, Gil said. I've never been more grateful that I'm not a worm, Millie said sarcastically. Hammond stepped between them. We need to hide. The magic will hardly tickle it. We'll have to sneak past it. Another thunderclap grunt, closer. In a forest, sure, but I don't see many trees in this tunnel, Millie said. The darkness seemed even denser around them, a lake of void swirling at their waists. We can't hide. It digs by scent. It's nearly blind, but it can smell us, Gil said. Not if our scent is blown down the sewer, Hammond said. Vento rume. In the smothered light of the glower, Hammond's eyes narrowed in concentration. Then, slowly, a draft ruffled Gil's hair. The swirling darkness seemed unaffected by the draft, which was strengthening to a breeze. Well done, Gil said. Hammond struggled for a moment to focus on Gil. He managed a weak smile. I felt that one. The thundering steps neared, and they huddled at the wall. The breeze chilled Gil's clammy skin. The Scruffin's steps slowed as it neared the bend before their passage. Gil's heart raced, and he fought to keep his breathing quiet. Ash hung over Hammond's shoulders, unmoving as a bag of oats. Hammond was grinning wildly. A cobblestone cracked. Another shattered, closer. A solidness displaced the black mist, a large form pushing through the darkness near them. It came level with them. The scent of loam and clay flooded the tunnel, but something hovered beneath the earthy smell. A sharp, bitter tang, like the runoff from a smelter. The Scruffin paused, and Gil felt it turn toward them. It breathed deeply. A 3-note whistle rang through the sewer. Before it faded, the Scruffin bounded away, scaled feet clapping against cobblestones. They let out a shaky breath. "Come on," Hammond said urgently. He hurried onward, and within seconds, only the barest glimmer of his glower was visible. Gil hurried forward and caught his arm, dragging him back to Rhea and Millie. "You're spell-drunk, Hammond. You need to listen to us from here on out. No running off." "Sure thing," Hammond said dutifully. But Gil did not trust the spell-drunk boy. He stayed close to Hammond as they followed after the monstrous Scruffin. A wall materialized from the darkness before them, and they followed the bend deeper. Gil raised his glower. His arm felt heavier than normal, as though he were making the action underwater. Something silky and cool brushed his arm. It was shadow, thick as cauldron slop, twining around his wrist, crawling toward the glower. He jerked away. The shadow tendril seemed to diffuse into the void. Though was it really gone? Perhaps it was like a wolf, preying on whoever left the safety of the pack. He tried inching closer to the others, but found he was already shoulder to shoulder with Millie, who had clamped his arm for support. Rhea was behind him. Hammond led the way with Ash across his shoulders. In the darkness, Gil was losing the courage he had found in the light. What could he do against monsters and sorcerers? He was a first-term alchemy student, far from an apothecary or workshop. There was no time for brewing or preparing, even if he did know what waited for them in the darkness. Time was an alchemist's greatest resource, and he had none. The feeling seemed to go from his legs, and his steps grew unsteady. His head swam. He thought how lovely it would be to leave, to rest in his room and thumb through his bookshelf in peace. He heard something, the low burr of voices in a distant room. The others stilled beside him as well, ears straining. It was Millie who spoke. "That's Wilkes. He's angry." A rumble like gravel poured over wood. "Must be the Scruffin," Hammond said eagerly. Then a loud, sharp voice cracked down the sewer, soaring over cobblestones as it had so often done over the kitchen. "You dare call the beast back after I've commanded it to patrol the sewer? I thought you had a mind, boy, but you've lost it with the mages. Fetch me the shillings before I throw you in the blasted flask with the rest of the rabble." They moved closer, but Wilkes's words were still lost. "Not like me," Treyborn laughed. "You think you're special, that I chose you from the crowd because of your great talent, your staggering intelligence. You're an outcast, even among Ironborn. Put the shillings there and step back from the cauldron before you kick the bloody thing over. Yes, I saw your jealousy, your anger. I nurtured it into a fine hatred of magic. You see that now, don't you? How easily I enlisted you to my cause, taught you how evil magic truly is, how mages truly are. For all your incompetence, I must say you were useful." A rumble from Wilkes, sharp and short. "I gleaned through your limited mind enough to experiment with alchemizing iron. You stole ingredients, gladly, I would say. Prepared cauldrons across the blasted school. I dare say the songs will remember you as a hero of the barony. What will they call this day? The last dance? Fall of magic? Take your mask off for a moment." The weight of Dreyborn's words settled into Gil's mind. The fall of magic? Suddenly, fear was not his only emotion. A small but fierce feeling was welling up for his friends, for the books and the egg, for Hazeltop. These things were somehow as vital to the world, his world, as the sun or air. His legs began to move. Rhea, Millie, and Hammond raced along with him. They barreled through the void, guided by something stronger than sight. A reddish light welled into existence down the passage. It brightened, and Gil saw solid forms beside a fire. The first was moving toward the second. "Off with the mask, Wilkes. You'll not be needing it any longer." The taller form approached the smaller. The scene sharpened with each step. Fire danced beneath a huge iron cauldron, spewing black mist that roiled over the cobblestones at knee height. Drayborn and Wilkes stood, faces hidden behind iron masks. Drayborn reached toward Wilkes. "Stop!" Gil yelled. Drayborn paused, hand over Wilkes's mask. He let his hand fall and smiled. "The scrubber has arrived, and he's brought a drunk, a boy, and a blind, and a—" He squinted, and his smile faltered. "Traitor?" "We won't let you do this," Gil said. Drayborn's grin sharpened. "You're just in time for a tasting. Isn't that what you scrubbers always wanted? Prepare the food. Wilkes, send your beast to bring the boy over." Wilkes's mouth thinned under his mask. "No." Gil waited for the outburst, but there was only silence. Then a full-bellied laugh from Drayborn. "You hate them, but now you hate me even more, is that it? Why don't you join your friends then?" His hand flashed and tore the mask from Wilkes's face. He shoved Wilkes toward them. As Drayborn turned to the cauldron, the wagon-bodied Scruffin emerged from the darkness behind them. "No, Branders," Wilkes called, but it was too late. Branders bounded toward Drayborn, who drew his sword smoothly, stepping aside and slashing. Sparks erupted as the sword struck the Scruffin's shoulder. Scales and blood fountained into the darkness. The Scruffin roared and wheeled back into the void. For a moment, Drayborn's back was to them. "Magmorume!" Hammond yelled. Gravorume! Blue light arced toward Hammond, but fingers of black mist leapt upward to swallow the light. Gil fumbled through his cloak and alchemy belt. He could make smoke, but what good was that in a room of smoke? Millie's stylus appeared in her hand, tracing runes in the air. Her head was cocked, eyes unfocused. Runes winked out of existence in the air, and suddenly a wall sprang up between Drayborn and the cauldron. It was waist high when the mist clawed it to a stop. Hammond fell to a knee, exhausted. Gil and Rhea were at his side immediately, stopping him and Ash from falling into the black mist. Drayborn cursed at the wall, separating him from the cauldron. He made to move around it, but another wall sprang up, perpendicular to the first. He tried to step around, but a third wall sprouted in his path. Hammond's eyes rolled, and he struggled to remain awake. Walls burst from the darkness like teeth around Drayborn. From a distance, it almost seemed as though they were guiding him, corralling him. "Call Branders back," Millie said to Wilkes. "He'll hurt her," Wilkes said in a tight voice. "I'll protect her," Gil said. Another wall blocked Drayborn, who hacked at it with his sword. "How?" Wilkes asked. "Magic." Wilkes glanced to Drayborn, who had found a break in the maze of walls and made straight for the cauldron. He drew breath. "Branders!" Heavy footsteps drilled against stone, and the wounded Scruffin burst from the darkness. Millie made a motion like scything wheat, and the walls vanished. She drew one more rune, smaller than the others, and it winked into nothing. Gil felt past a dozen ingredients in his cloak and found rosegrass and horn. He cast a handful of powder toward the master and hurled the entire bundle of rosegrass into the cloud. There was a bang that shattered Gil's teeth. Drayborn flinched and turned to face the threat. Branders bounded toward the disoriented master. Too late, spun toward the Scruffin, but his boot caught on Millie's final wall, peeking through the darkness. The Scruffin shouldered him as it raced past. Already off balance, Draborn was lifted from the ground and thrown onto the cauldron. His long frame hung over the rim, face up and still. Black mist collected around him, hissing and spitting as it kissed his iron mask. Gil wondered if he was unconscious, or even dead, but Draborn drew a shaky breath, coughed. He tried to raise himself from the cauldron and failed. There was a small smile beneath the mask. A watery voice trickled out. "Always knew it would be me." He coughed weakly and said the word to turn Gil's blood to ice. "Brindle." Black mist geysered skyward from the cauldron, choking the sewer and scouring for the grates to overwhelm Hazeltop. The initial wave washed over Gil. A cool numbness flooded his throat with the first breath. The room darkened. Hammond's weight was suddenly mountainous, and Gil braced himself against the floor, breath held against the surge of mist. His hand closed over something round and hard as stone, a scruffin scale. Something sparked in his dampening mind, something about scales and iron. Rhea collapsed into darkness beside him, Millie a moment later. Hammond and Ash tumbled from his leaden arms. Gil swayed, holding the last of his breath as the mist flooded Hazeltop. He struggled to find the iron cauldron and then spotted it, there at the heart of the void. With the last of his strength, he threw the scale. His breath was a murmur in a maelstrom. Brindle. Brilliance flared, and all was still.